Noah Daniels didn't expect to become a public spectacle in the middle of Trader Joe's. But then again, his 2-year-old daughter Taylor was currently having a meltdown that could probably be heard in the next zip code. "I know, baby girl, I know," Noah whispered, crouching beside the cart as Taylor's cries echoed through the snack aisle. "You're tired, I'm tired. We're both losing it, huh?" His hair was a mess, his shirt stained with applesauce from breakfast, and his eyes carried the weight of 3 jobs and not enough hours in the day. Still, he gently rocked Taylor in his arms, humming softly, trying to keep her calm. That's when he heard the other baby. A few feet away, a woman stood cradling a screaming infant who looked about 8 months old. The baby's face was red, arms flailing, and the woman looked absolutely panicked. "Hey," Noah said, his voice calm but firm, stepping a little closer. "Do you want me to try?" The woman looked up, startled. She had dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, a tailored coat that looked expensive, and a face that was clearly used to being composed, but right now, she looked like she was about to cry herself. "She won't stop," the woman said, her voice breaking. "I've tried everything." "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the baby. She hesitated, but something in his voice, his eyes tired but kind, made her nod. Noah stepped forward, gently adjusted the baby in his arms, and began to sway. He hummed the same tune he always did for Taylor, soft, simple, calming. Within seconds, the baby's cries softened, a hiccup, then stillness. The woman stared at him like he'd just performed a miracle. "Wow. Sometimes it's just a rhythm thing," he said, chuckling softly. "I've had some practice." Taylor had stopped crying too, watching the new baby with curiosity while hugging her half-eaten cereal bar. "I'm Sawyer Lane," the woman said, voice still a little breathless. "Noah Daniels," he replied, glancing down as the baby began to doze in his arms. "And this is Taylor. She's the boss," Sawyer laughed, brushing a hand over her face. "That was incredible. Seriously, you have no idea how much I needed that." He handed the baby back gently. "No problem, first kid," she nodded. "Yeah, single mom, I'm still learning." He didn't ask questions. He just smiled, even though it was a little tired. "We're all learning." Sawyer followed him to the checkout lanes, almost without thinking. Something about Noah, his calm, his warmth, the way he handled chaos without flinching, made her feel oddly steady. As he bagged his groceries with practiced speed, she noticed the coupons and the way he counted every dollar. There was no wife's name on the daycare receipt he pulled out of his jacket, no ring on his finger, just a quiet man doing the best he could. She handed him a bottle of juice Taylor had been eyeing earlier, the one he'd put back on the shelf. "You forgot this," she said. Noah looked at it, then her. "It's okay, really, my treat," she said with a wink. "Consider it a thank you for saving my sanity." He hesitated, then took it. "Well, thank you then." Sawyer hesitated at the door. "Can I ask, do you come here often?" He laughed. "What is this, a bad rom-com pickup line?" "No, I'd love to buy you coffee sometime as a thank you, or maybe just talk." Noah blinked, clearly surprised. "I don't have a lot of free time, but sure, I'd like that." Sawyer smiled, heart racing in a way it hadn't in years. She didn't tell him she lived in a penthouse on Fifth or that her baby's stroller cost more than most people's rent. She didn't tell him she owned the tech company that manufactured the baby monitor he probably couldn't afford. She just gave him her name, her real name. Not the one on the magazine covers, not the one in business articles, just Sawyer. And he looked at her like she was a person, not a label, not a brand. Just a tired mom, grateful for kindness. As they walked out into the cold air, Taylor tugged on Noah's sleeve. "Daddy, she pretty." Sawyer laughed, cheeks turning red. Noah glanced at her, then down at his daughter. "Yeah, kiddo, she is." He hadn't noticed the car that pulled up for Sawyer was a sleek black Escalade with a suited driver. She waved it away before he could see, because right now she didn't want to be the millionaire with the perfect image. She just wanted to be the woman who'd fallen for a man in the cereal aisle without him even knowing it. And as she watched him buckle Taylor into her second-hand car seat and drive away in a dented old Honda, her heart did something it hadn't done in a long time. It hoped. The cafe Sawyer had picked was tucked between a bookstore and a florist, the kind of place with chipped mugs and handwritten menus on chalkboards. She arrived first, her daughter with the nanny for the afternoon, a new one, since the last had quit in tears after 2 weeks. Sawyer had downplayed the luxury in her appearance. No designer heels, no statement jewelry, just a navy sweater, jeans, and her hair loosely down. She sat by the window, fingers wrapped around a mug of peppermint tea, watching the street. Noah arrived 3 minutes late, balancing a paper bag and a reusable cup in one hand, Taylor's tiny mittened hand in the other. He spotted her immediately, nodded once, and led his daughter to the booth. "I brought muffins," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hope you're okay with blueberry." "I love blueberry," Sawyer replied, trying not to sound too eager. "Thank you." Taylor climbed onto the bench beside her father, eyeing Sawyer with the wide-eyed caution of a child unsure if they were allowed to speak yet. "Hi, Taylor," Sawyer said gently. "I like your boots." "They have dinosaurs," Taylor informed her solemnly. "Very cool." Noah unwrapped the muffin, divided it with practiced precision, and handed half to his daughter. Sawyer watched him, then leaned in slightly. "You always this organized, only when it comes to snacks," he said. "Everything else is a bit of a disaster." "You don't seem like a disaster." "I hide it well. Coffee helps." She laughed, then paused. "Do you always work weekends?" "Yeah, I've got a couple shifts lined up tomorrow." "Grocery delivery in the morning, then driving for a wedding party in the evening. Pays better than I expected." "What about time for yourself?" he shrugged. "That's not really on the schedule right now." Sawyer hesitated. "Do you have family nearby, anyone who helps out?" "My sister's in Arizona." "We talk, but she's got her own stuff, and Taylor's mom passed 2 winters ago." His tone was flat, not defensive, just factual. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Thanks." He looked at Taylor, who was now focused on peeling her muffin like it was a science experiment. "We manage." "Some days are easier than others." Sawyer nodded, filing the information away carefully. "I didn't know my own father. He left when I was a baby. I think that's why I'm still figuring this whole parenting thing out. There's no blueprint." Noah looked at her with something close to curiosity. "You seem like you've got it together." "That's mostly illusion," she admitted. "I've got help, nannies, night nurses, all that. But sometimes I look at her and think, what if I'm doing it wrong? You care. That's more than a lot of parents do." She smiled, but it was a quiet one. "I don't know how you do it, just watching you with her in the store." She trailed off, not wanting to make it sound like pity. "I just don't have the option to give up," he said. "That helps." Taylor tugged her father's sleeve. "Can I draw?" He pulled a small notepad and a crayon from his coat pocket, handing them over without missing a beat. Sawyer watched, impressed again by how effortlessly he moved through parenting. Not flashy, not performative, just steady. "What did you do before?" she asked. "Before what?" "Before this. Before fatherhood became your full-time job." "Carpentry. Mostly cabinet builds and custom shelving. Then the housing crash hit and jobs dried up. I worked construction for a bit, then bounced around. Thought about starting my own thing, but that takes capital I don't have." Sawyer nodded slowly. "If you ever wanted to get back into that design, building, I know people. I could introduce you." He raised an eyebrow. "You know cabinet people, I know business owners." "Some of them need good hands." He considered that. "Why would you do that?" "Because you helped me when I needed it," she said simply. "And because I believe in investing in people who deserve a break." He studied her for a moment, then leaned back. "I'll think about it." She didn't push. Instead, she turned her attention to Taylor's drawing. "Is that a spaceship?" "It's a horse," Taylor said, offended. "Of course it is. A beautiful, brave horse." Taylor beamed. When they left the cafe, the sky had turned a dull silver, hinting at snow. Sawyer offered to walk them to their car. Noah hesitated, then nodded. As they reached the parking lot, she looked at him. "I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But I wanted to." "Me too." He opened the back door, helped Taylor into her booster seat, and buckled her in. Then he turned back to Sawyer, hands in his coat pockets. "Hey," he said, voice quieter now. "You're easy to talk to, that's rare." She blinked, caught off guard. "You too." "I don't really date," he added. "Haven't since Taylor was born." "I haven't either," she said. "It's complicated. It always is." They stood there a moment longer, the breath between them visible in the cold. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know." But it wasn't someone who'd show up in a place like that cafe and just talk like a normal person. She tilted her head. "You don't know me yet." "You're right," he said. "But I'd like to." She watched him drive off, her heart strangely unsettled like something had shifted and couldn't shift back. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of not knowing. The invitation arrived in an envelope heavier than most mail Noah received. It was ivory cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that shimmered under the kitchen light. He turned it over twice, wondering if it had been delivered to the wrong address. Sawyer Lane cordially invites you to the Lane Foundation Winter Benefit Gala. He read it again, slower. Then again. "Daddy, that's sparkly," Taylor said, tugging on his sleeve while her legs swung beneath the kitchen chair. "Can I hold it?" "Careful," he said, handing it to her. "It might explode." She giggled and held it like a treasure. The RSVP deadline was in 2 days. He didn't need to check his bank account to know he couldn't afford a rental suit or a babysitter for a fancy gala. But the note tucked inside, handwritten in familiar cursive, made him pause. "Just come. Bring Taylor. I have the rest handled." He hadn't even known her last name until now. That night, after Taylor was asleep and the dishes were done, Noah sat on the edge of his bed staring at the invitation. His phone lay silent beside him, her number just one tap away. He didn't call. He didn't need to. He knew what his gut was telling him. He just wasn't sure if it was courage or stupidity. The day of the gala brought snow, sharp and relentless, coating the sidewalks in a slush that soaked through even the best boots. But when the black town car pulled up in front of his apartment building, Taylor squealed with delight, her mittened hands pressed to the window. "Is that for us, Daddy?" Noah didn't answer right away. The driver stepped out, opened the back door, and offered a warm, "Mr. Daniels," Taylor gasped. "We're special." He helped her into the car seat already installed in the back and climbed in after her, still unsure how any of this was real. The ride was smooth and quiet, the city blurring past in frosted shades of gray and gold. When they pulled up to the venue, a modern glass building with twinkling lights strung across the awning, Noah felt entirely out of place. Inside, Sawyer was radiant in a floor-length navy gown, her dark hair swept back, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on him. She crossed the room with practiced grace, but the second she reached him, the formality dropped. "You came," she said, breathless. "I wasn't sure I should." "I was." Taylor tugged on Sawyer's skirt. "You look like a moon princess." Sawyer crouched down, her eyes lighting with something that wasn't polished or rehearsed. "And you look like a very brave explorer." Taylor twirled in her tulle dress, clearly pleased. "Come with me," Sawyer said, rising and offering her hand not just to Taylor, but to Noah. They followed her through the crowd, past tables covered in crystal place settings and name cards, past waiters carrying silver trays of hors d'oeuvres Noah couldn't pronounce. She led them to a quieter room off to the side, where a few other children played under the supervision of 2 caretakers. "She'll be safe here," Sawyer said gently. "I thought she might like to be with other kids for a bit." Taylor was already darting toward a table of building blocks, her coat forgotten on the floor. Noah turned to Sawyer. "You think of everything." "I try." They returned to the main hall, and for the first time Noah saw the full scope of who she was. People greeted her with deference. Her name was on banners, her image in the event program. A man approached with a microphone and asked if she was ready for her speech. "You're the one hosting this," he said quietly. "Yes. You didn't mention that. You didn't ask." He followed her to the edge of the stage, watching her step up under the lights. Her voice rang clear and assured as she spoke of the Foundation's work support for single parents, affordable childcare initiatives, job training programs. She spoke from experience, not just statistics. She didn't mention her wealth. She didn't have to. Noah watched the crowd nod, applaud, some even moved to tears. But his eyes never left her. Later, over champagne flutes neither of them touched, he leaned against the balcony railing beside her. "You're not just someone who knows business owners," he said. "No," she admitted. "I own one." "More than one," she hesitated, then nodded. 5 and a few investments." He stared out at the skyline. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to be seen, not for what I have, but for who I am." He tilted his head toward her. "And who is that?" "Someone who's tired of rooms full of people who pretend to care." Someone who'd rather be in a grocery store talking to a man who knows how to calm a baby with a song. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, I don't know what to do with this. I'm not asking you to do anything, but it changes things. Does it have to? He turned to face her fully. You live in a world I'll never be a part of. I don't want someone who belongs to it. I want someone who makes me forget it exists. The wind blew her hair across her cheek. He reached up, brushed it back without thinking. I can't give you a penthouse, he said. Or a private jet. I already have those. I don't want to be your project. You're not. He looked at her a moment longer, then down at the city lights. I'm scared, he said finally. Me too. She reached for his hand, and this time he didn't let go. The sound of Taylor's laughter echoed from the hallway as she raced ahead of Noah, her boots still damp from the slush outside. The nanny Sawyer had arranged met them at the apartment door, already crouching to greet Taylor with a plush dinosaur in one hand and a juice box in the other. I'll only be a few hours, Sawyer told her softly, stepping back to let them in. Call if she needs anything. She'll be fine, the nanny said with a smile already leading Taylor toward the playroom. Sawyer closed the door gently behind them, pulling off her gloves as she turned to Noah. She really likes her, she said. She likes you more. He stepped out of his boots, setting them carefully by the mat. I still don't know how you convinced me to come here. You didn't fight that hard. I thought I'd see you in a cafe or a park again. Not here. He looked around the penthouse, its clean lines and muted tones quietly elegant. This place could fit my entire building inside it. I don't live here to impress anyone, she said. It's mostly just where I sleep and forget to cook. He gave her a sidelong glance. So what do you do when you're not running foundations and hosting galas? I paint, she said, surprising even herself by admitting it. Badly, but it helps me think. You paint, don't sound so shocked. She walked toward a narrow hallway. Come on. Noah followed her into a smaller room, its walls lined with half-finished canvases, open sketchbooks, and brushes still drying in jam jars. A folded blanket lay across a cushioned bench by the window, and the scent of clean linseed oil hung in the air. I haven't shown this to anyone, she said quietly, pulling a stool out from under one of the tables. Why not? They always want to find a meaning in everything. Sometimes I just want to make a mess without explaining it. He stepped closer to one of the canvases. This one looks like a storm. It was, she said. Last spring, he looked at her. You hide yourself well. I'm tired of hiding, she said, especially from you. He met her eyes and something shifted between them. Not the thrill of early attraction or the nervousness of new company, something deeper. Something that asked for trust. What would happen, he said, voice low, if I told you I wanted more than this? Sawyer didn't blink. Then I'd say I've been waiting for you to say that. He stepped forward, hands still at his sides. But I don't want to be a name on your guest list. Or a story you tell about the guy you helped. You wouldn't be. I'm not used to being offered things I didn't earn. It's not about what you earn, it's about what you deserve. He shook his head. That's the part I don't know how to believe yet. Let me help you find a way to believe it. They stood there, the city lights flickering behind them through the window, neither speaking. Then she reached for him slowly, her hand brushing his jaw, thumb resting just below his cheekbone. He didn't pull away. I've been terrified, she whispered, of wanting something real and not knowing what to do when I find it. You found it, he asked. I think I did. His hand came up to hers, holding it there. Then maybe we figure it out together. Later, after Taylor had fallen asleep in one of the guest rooms, curled beneath a blanket printed with stars, Noah sat on the balcony, a mug of tea warming his hands. Sawyer stepped out beside him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. You're quiet, she said. I'm thinking about how fast everything's changed. Does it scare you? A little. But not enough to leave, he looked at her, the city glowing behind her like a halo. I've spent so long surviving, I forgot what it was like to hope. She sank into the chair beside him, knees pulled up, eyes on his profile. You don't have to hope alone. He reached for her hand again. I don't want to. In the weeks that followed, things didn't become perfect, but they became possible. Noah took on a part-time design job Sawyer had quietly arranged through a friend, and for the first time in years, he came home without the weight of exhaustion pressing between his shoulders. Taylor started preschool at a nearby co-op, and Sawyer began visiting the art room again, not to escape, but to create. They didn't announce anything. They didn't need to. It was in the way she kept a toothbrush for him in her bathroom, and the way he made her coffee exactly how she liked it every morning without asking. It was in how Taylor reached for Sawyer's hand when crossing the street, and how Noah left notes for her on the fridge in his messy handwriting. One Sunday, as snow fell soft and slow outside the windows, Noah stood in the kitchen making pancakes while Taylor built a pillow fort in the living room. Sawyer stepped in behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, her cheek pressed to his back. "I used to think I had to do everything alone," she said. "You don't anymore." She turned him toward her, eyes steady. "Do you know what I want? Tell me." She reached into the drawer and handed him a small, flat box. Inside was a key. "I want you here, not sometimes. All the time." He looked at it, then at her. "You're sure? I've never been more certain of anything." He closed the box gently, then set it on the counter. "Then I guess we're home." She smiled, and this time it wasn't polished or poised, it was real, wide, and unguarded. Outside, the city kept moving. But inside, a new life had begun, not perfect, not simple, but theirs, and it was enough, more than enough. The first time Noah saw the workshop, he didn't say anything. He just stood in the doorway of the sunlit studio, eyes moving over the raw wood stacked neatly against the walls, the industrial saw waiting in the corner, the long table in the center already laid with tools he hadn't touched in years. Sawyer leaned against the doorframe beside him, arms crossed. "I had it cleared out last week. It was just storage before." Noah stepped forward slowly, trailing his fingers across the edge of the table. "This is real oak," I asked around, she said. "Got recommendations?" "Figured you'd want to pick your own materials going forward, but I wanted you to have a head start." He turned to her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. You said once you couldn't afford to start over. I remember." "Well," she said, pushing off the doorframe, "now you can start however you want. No strings, no expectations." He stood there for a long moment before moving to the workbench. "There was a design I sketched years ago. A bookshelf that curves like a wave. I never had the chance to build it. You do now." He looked back at her. "You're giving me space to be who I was before everything fell apart. I'm giving you space to become whoever you want to be next." The air between them felt charged but not heavy. It wasn't about what had been lost anymore, it was about what they could build, piece by piece, with steady hands and open hearts. Later that week, Noah surprised her by showing up at her office just before closing. Not in his usual jeans and boots, but in slacks and a button-down, his hair still damp from a late shower. He held a small box wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. "I made something," he said. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Instead, she led him into her office and closed the door behind them. Inside the box was a carved wooden music box, smooth and curved like a river stone. When she twisted the tiny brass handle on the side, it played a soft tune, gentle, steady, familiar. "That's the lullaby," she said quietly. He nodded. "The one I hummed to Taylor that night in the store." She looked at him, her throat tight. "It's beautiful. I didn't know how to say what I felt, so I made it instead." Her voice was a whisper. "What do you feel?" He stepped closer, his fingers brushing hers as he took the box from her hands and set it gently on the desk. "Like I've spent the last few years holding my breath, and now I can finally exhale." She leaned into him, hands sliding around his waist. "I feel like I finally found the place I belong." He kissed her then, slow, certain, and everything that had been building between them since the beginning. It wasn't rushed or hesitant. It was the kind of kiss that made time irrelevant, that told the truth more clearly than any words could. Afterward, they stood together, foreheads touching, the music box still playing softly in the background. "I love you," she said first, her voice steady. Noah didn't hesitate. "I love you too." They didn't need to talk about the future in that moment, it had already begun. The ceremony was small, not rushed, not grand, just intentional. They stood barefoot in the garden behind the workshop on a warm spring morning, surrounded by wildflowers and the scent of fresh cedar. Taylor wore a pale yellow dress and clutched a bouquet of dandelions she'd picked herself. Sawyer wore no veil, No diamonds, just a soft silk dress and a smile that didn't fade once during the entire exchange of vows. Noah wore a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a simple band he'd carved himself from walnut wood. The officiant spoke, but it was their words that mattered. "I choose this life with you," Sawyer said, her voice shaking only slightly. "Not because it's easy, but because it's ours." Noah looked at her, his voice low and sure. "You found me when I had nothing left to offer, and you saw something worth loving. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you were right." After the ceremony, they danced barefoot in the grass, Taylor spinning between them, her laughter the only music they needed. They didn't go on a honeymoon, not right away. Instead, they spent the first few weeks of married life building furniture together, eating breakfast on the back steps, and letting the rhythm of their new life settle in without pressure. Sawyer started painting again, but this time with Taylor beside her, smearing colors across paper with wide, delighted strokes. Noah began taking commissions for custom furniture quietly at first, then steadily, as word of his craftsmanship spread. They didn't need perfection. They just needed each other. One summer morning, months later, Sawyer stood in the doorway of the workshop, watching Noah put the finishing touches on a rocking chair. Taylor sat nearby with a book in her lap, humming softly to herself. Sawyer stepped inside, holding something behind her back. "You've been busy," she said. "Orders keep coming in." He looked up, smiling. "Not that I'm complaining." She handed him a small envelope. "What's this?" He opened it slowly and pulled out a photo, black and white, grainy, unmistakable. His eyes shot up to hers. "Is this?" She nodded, tears already brimming. "Looks like we're growing the family." He crossed the room in 2 long strides and pulled her into his arms. Taylor looked up from her book, confused. "Are you crying, Daddy?" he laughed, brushing a tear from his cheek. "No, kiddo, just really, really happy." Sawyer wrapped her arms around his waist. "I didn't think life could be fuller than this." He kissed her temple. "Turns out we're just getting started." And so they were together, in a life carved not from perfection, but from patience, trust, and the kind of love that grows stronger with every sunrise.